Exporting to Alembic. Good day. Today we will introduce you to such an unusual file format as Alembic, ABC. So, what exactly is Alembic? Alembic is a computer graphics interchange file format used by professionals for visual effects and animation. Since 2011, the Alembic format has become widespread in animation. Its main purpose is the exchange of geometry models between different groups of the same objects. Alembic supports general geometric representations including meshes, subdivisions, surfaces, parametric curves, NURBS, patches, and particles. Alembic doesn't store a procedural tool dependency graph, but stores baked animation and soft close results. Alembic was developed as an open source library by Sony Pictures. What does Alembic do? Bakes complex animated icon results into a compressed Alembic point cache format for use in other 3D programs. For rendering icon animation in Cinema 4D, Maya, 3ds Max and others. Export for icon objects to compositing tools, Fusion, Nuke, Isotropics and others. Create static meshes of soft close physics and export those meshes for 3D printing. Bake soft close physics to upload to Sketchfab. Benefits of using Alembic. First, the FBX format doesn't accurately convey soft issue animation, but Alembic does. Second, the Alembic format allows exporting vertex and mesh animation data at the OBJ level. Third, the Alembic format allows you to export animation data for exchange between various 3D programs. Alembic usage concept. The concept includes two aspects, animation and texture. You need to separately export animations in ABC format and textures, and then merge them together in programs such as Cinema 4D, Maya, 3ds Max and others. The fact is that the Alembic file contains only vertex and mesh animation data, without packaging the necessary textures to ensure the minimum size of its cells. What do we do at the beginning? First, export the ABC file. Select the object you want in Iclone 7 and export the ordered and positioned clay statues with vertex and polygonal meshes frame by frame into one file. Second, then we move on to export textures to 3D Exchange 7 pipeline. Third, open the file of our animated chapter in this program and export it to the FBX and FBM formats, which contain the details of the material. Note, you can, of course, get a texture image when you export the ABC file, but the details of the material will be missing, making it difficult for you to reuse the material with external programs. Third, merging the ABC file with textures. You will need to integrate the Alembic file with the FBM file to Cinema 4D, Maya, 3ds Max, and others. More on this later. Alembic Export UI. We find the targets settings for exporting file in the drop-down menu of the File tab in the Export subsection. You need to fill in 6 main items of export settings. 1. Select the file format. It could be HDF5 or a Java. The format you choose here depends on your preferred file import settings for Cinema 4D, Maya, 3ds Max, and others. 2. Export range. You can select the current frame, or all frames, or a specific range of frames. 3. Sample time a normal frame. The higher the sample frame value, the less accurate the Alembic animation will be. 4. We have to activate the world space field to include the transformation data of the exported file. 5. Export the texture. If you want to export textures together with the Alembic file into one folder, then activate this field. 6. Merge opacity to diffuse PNG. Some 3D programs don't support texture opacity. It's for those programs that you need to combine the diffuse and opacity textures into a PNG image in order to correctly convey the transparency results. Export range. When you export an object with animation or motion to an Alembic file, you can determine whether you want to export the object's status in one frame or in a range of frames. For soft closing, a range of frames is best, but for a static object, you are better off choosing one frame that is most suitable for texture transfer. Since iClone doesn't support creating, morphing, or sculpting objects, it's best to use a soft close object when simulating soft close physics. Let us consider this in more detail. For example, let us emphasize once again that it's better to export static object props using the radio button current frame in the export range. But if you are exporting a soft close object, for example hair or clothes, then you better select the radio the all button. Setting a regular frame. Remember that the default recommended speed is 1 for Alembic format accurate animation export. For example, if you choose the sample frame value of 2, then only every second frame from the sample of all frames will be taken into account during export, which won't allow you to accurately convey the animation of the Chekta's movement. Enabling transformation with world space. To accurately render the animation of the Chekta, we need to include transformation data from world space. This allows you to fix information about the location of the object in the Alembic file. That is, it ensures that your Chekta doesn't receive additional changes in rotation, movement along the axis and zoom. Now, let's look at how this is done specifically. Here, for example, our Chekta sits on a chair. Therefore, we must export this chair in FBX format and then return to iClone, and by pressing the radio button world space, export the same chair to Alembic format. When we load the FBX file we received, for example, into the Cinema 4D program, and then into the same program we load the Chekta file in Alembic format. Check if there is a change in the Chekta transformation, or the Chekta hasn't moved relative to the chair, then the file is ready for rendering. But even if you have not activated the world space button, then you can manually move your Chekta before rendering the entire project. Features of exporting animation of hair and clothes. In order for your Chekta animation to be packaged correctly before exporting the Alembic file, you need to open the project tab and find the bake animation value, thereby making this radio button active. Alembic with constraints keys. Using constraint keys, you can enable key animation effects in Alembic in order to replicate the same effects if any other program, such as Cinema 4D. So, the first thing, let's set the movement to the Chekta in any way, for example, path keys. Second, open the timeline of the scene, and under the tab of our Chekta we will see the motion line, and below it there are two more lines, constraint and path. Then we will export file using the file export Alembic tabs. So, if you don't turn on the radio button world space, then you can export only movements without key effects. Pipeline for heat film. You can export 3D objects with animation using Alembic files for heat film. To do this, you need to take several steps. Step 1. Take an object, for example, a waving flag. Place this object in the props folder in the custom tab. Step 2. Save the flag file in iClone in the Content Manager tab, Custom subsection. Step 3. Next, let's load our flag into 3D Exchange 7 pipeline. Step 4. Next, export the OBJ file using the active radio buttons, merge opacity to diffuse texture, and the split multi-material mesh for Alembic button. The object will be exported to OBJ along with the textures PNG files. Exporting Alembic file. We go back again to iClone 7 and export the flag file in Alembic format. Integrating base OBJ and Alembic files in heat film. Next, open the heat film program. Find in the menu the tab Import 3D Model and the Import pop-up menu and insert the flag OBJ file. Then find the Import 3D Model Animation tab and import the Alembic file flag. After that, we find in the Media tab the pop-up menu in which we find the subsection Import 3D Model Animation. Next, drag and drop the imported flag OBJ file to the editor section. After dragging and dropping, you can see the flag OBJ icon appear on the editor tab. Find the animation section under the flag OBJ tab in the timeline drop-down menu and drag and drop the flag ABC file to that section. That's it, the job is done. And how you can see the result by playing in the playback. Pipeline for Maya. Now let's see how you can export Alembic files to Maya. To demonstrate this process, let's take a checker, for example, a girl with movements. Select the Export Alembic tab in the File pop-up menu of the iClone program. You have the Export Alembic menu, in which you need to select one of the three export range buttons. Let's select, for example, the last button, range. Now our checked animation has been exported to Alembic file. Since we need to get the relationship of textures with the polygonal meshes of the model, we need information about the material, which is a combination of various textures and various textures must be mapped to the polygonal meshes of our model. This information is saved in the FBX file when the checker is exported from the 3D Exchange pipeline. Therefore, exporting a model in the FBX file format is completely suitable for us for later use in Maya. So, we have chosen an object. This is our goal. Let's save this object on the Avatar tab in the Custom subsection. Let's load our checker into the 3D Exchange pipeline program. Next, we export our object as a FBX file, specifying the Maya Win 64-bit program and the export target settings in the mesh section of the radio. The include geometry button must be active and the radio button all selected. Please note that we do not turn on the radio the animation button in this case. Now go to Maya, import the FBX file of our model, and in the Hypershade panel you can see all the relevant materials that were automatically generated by the program. And now we delete the model itself, meshes, bonds in the outliner panel, since we no longer need them here. But make sure that all the material balls in the Hypershade panel remain there. Now import the model file in ABC format and drag and drop it to the workspace. The object will be completely gray after import. Drag the material balls by holding them with the middle mouse button from the Hypershade panel to the corresponding polygonal meshes of the model. That is, for example, drag the skin body texture onto the model's body. We repeat all the steps of transferring the balls of materials until we have completely the entire model with textures. After that, you models enjoy the result on playback. Pipeline for Cinema 4D. The workflow for exporting an Alembic file to Cinema 4D is very similar to the workflow in Maya. That is, first we save the checker with the movements in iClone and export the animation of the checker to the Alembic. Don't forget, in the project tab, which is located under the timeline at the bottom right and looks like a gear, turn on baking animation. The radio button soft close is not activated. After that, it's desirable to enable the playback of the entire selected scene in by frame mode. Then open the 3D Exchange program and export the checked avatar file to the FBX format. The only difference is that in the export targets you need to leave the value custom and make all active buttons the same as when exporting FBX to Maya. When we export the FBX file to Cinema 4D, we will see that all the checked texture balls are saved in a tab under the timeline. We can open or add an FBC file after that and add textures to the checked that appears, which looks like a gray clay statue. Sequentially transfer the balls of texture to hair, clothes, body skin, shoes, etc. And after that we either delete the image obtained from the import of the FBX file or make it invisible. That is, now you can see the movement of the girl in real time by turning on the play back key. Pipeline with material mapping table file. When we add information about packet materials to the export of the FBX file, we save 3 to 5 times more time than exporting the Alembic file without textures. Let's select, for example, our checked in the form of a dog, giving it a walk motion. Export the Alembic file from the pop-up menu of the file command with the export of textures. Don't forget to bake animation in the project tab. Let's save the resulting Alembic file in the folder where you will see the export results. Now we can see that 3 types of files have appeared in our folder: the Alembic file itself, texture files, and the INI file, which describes the statuses of the polygonal mesh and material image for the ratio of the material image and textures. Integrating materials and Alembic file with plugin for 3D tools. You can use any plugin written specifically to import Alembic files. Load our Alembic file and INI files as well as texture file into the plugin. If you are a developer, you can write a plugin script yourself that will allow you to shorten the Alembic assignment process to one simple mouse click. The notices. Here is what you need to implement the Alembic file export process. iLlusion products, iClone Pro 6.5 or above, 3D Exchange pipeline 6.5 or above, Maya 2012 or above, 3ds Max 2016 or above, HitFilm Pro 4 or above, Cinema 4D R18 or above. That's all for today. Subscribe to our channel, like, comment. support my profile on the Patreon website.